Good evening, citizens of Arcadia. Tonight's broadcast carries urgent developments from beyond our borders, together with steadfast messages of unity and vigilance. In Ankara, President Alexander Ozturk has addressed the Turkish nation with a historic statement acknowledging deepening threats from both foreign interference and internal discord. The president announced sweeping emergency measures designed to secure Turkey's sovereignty and restore unity. Turkey stands at a crossroad in history, surrounded by instability, challenged by foreign manipulation, and threatened by internal division. We must ask ourselves, do we continue on a path of slow decay, or do we rise together in our defense of our public? These measures will temporarily expand the executive authority needed to stabilize the nation. We will secure our borders, protect our institutions, and confront corruption wherever it hides. Not about power, but about responsibility. Analysts note these measures mirror moments in history when nations, facing threats to their core, turn to unity and decisive action. The Turkish leadership, invoking constitutional authority, frames this as defense, not domination. Tensions in the Balkans have reached alarming new heights. Separatist threats of nuclear attack, mass troop mobilizations, and foreign interventions risk plunging the region into conflict in unseen decades. Vietnam formally withdraws its recognition of Kosovo following what it called reckless nuclear threats. The Vietnamese Air Force strikes militant cells in Kosovo, with over 5,000 Vietnamese troops deployed under Yugoslav invitation to support territorial integrity. Kosovo, in defiance, vows to build tanks, drones, armored cars, and threatens to burn Belgrade and Hanoi. The Alkebulan People's Republic, or APF, closes the Suez Canal and Gibraltar Strait to all military shipments without customs, calling for separatists to disarm until recognized by international law. Tonight, the world holds its breath as words of diplomacy collide with the cold steel of mobilization. Amid foreign deployments, Vietnam unveils grand domestic plans, Project Saigon and Project Hanoi, aimed to reforest and transform cities into green metropolises. Inspired by Singapore. New metro lines open, and the Empire 88 Tower promises to reshape Ho Chi Minh City's skyline, part of the Quang Phuc program to vault Vietnam to high income status within 3 years. A stark reminder that even as chaos looms, nations shape grand visions for the generations to come. And now we will go to the favorite subject of the people of the nation, the voices of the Republic. Good evening, citizens of the Republic of Arcadia. This is the Voices of the Republic. Joining me tonight is a commander of the top secret intelligence sector. So, Commander, it is such an honor to have you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. How are you doing?
Quite well.
I'm very glad to hear. How are things in the military working out so far?
Some things just can't be said publicly, however. There's a wide variety of operations going on for the safety of our people.
Perfectly understandable. Now, Commander, the threats from Kosovo to launch nuclear strikes against Belgrade and Hanoi shocked many today. How does Arcadia's intelligence community intercept the real risk?
Our analysts consider these threats largely rhetorical, rooted in desperation. But the risk is never zero. Reckless actors, facing encirclement, sometimes gamble everything. That is why constant vigilance and intelligence cooperation are vital.
I see. Intelligence gathering certainly helps. Excuse me. Certainly does help prepare for the worst. We have also observed Vietnam deploying thousands of troops and naval forces. Does this risk border escalation by chance?
Foreign deployments in a fragile region always risk miscalculation. Vietnam's intervention, while framed as anti terrorist, heightens tension. The key question is whether the separatist leadership chooses diplomacy or self destruction, something a lot of people fall to.
Indeed, and it's one people are hoping to avoid. But with that being said, what lessons should Arcadians draw from tonight?
That strength must be paired with wisdom, and our republic remains watchful, prepared, and above all, united.
I could not agree more. The Arcadian people are honestly united, and you have their full backing. Well, everyone, that was some brilliant words said by the commander here. And now we cut to the commercials, which afterwards I have a very certain guest coming on, the General Colonel of the Yugoslavian military. Stay tuned.
We march with steady stride under the banner side by side. Raise the flag, hear the call. Arcadia stands one and all, marching strong.
Good evening, citizens of the Republic. Welcome back from the break. Here on Voices of the Republic, we have a very special guest, the General Colonel of the Yugoslavian military. So, General Colonel, how are you doing? And actually, how was the trip here?
Well, I'm doing very well. The trip, it was quite long, but I found it very amusing.
I'm glad you had fun on the way here. Now, for the viewers for our viewers of the state news, could you summarize how this crisis began and what, in your view, led to this entire escalation?
Well, you see, this conflict has its roots in very ancient history. There has always been conflict between the peoples of Albania and Serbia and Montenegro. However, in recent decades, this conflict has been sort of halted. Conflicts have been resolved and the people lived in peace. However, now Albanian extremism and separatism is on the rise. Ever since 1992, members of a terrorist organization known as the Kosovo Liberation Army, who control small amounts of territory in the countryside of the southern province of Kosovo and Metohija, illegally declared the independence of a so-called Republic of Kosovo without lawful permission or consent from the Yugoslav government in Belgrade. They then attempted to gather international support from the nations of the World Forum, but this failed miserably, as most, if not all nations, immediately knew that these people were criminals and not to be trusted.
I see. It's a certainly interesting point of view there. Kosovo recently has issued some threats of nuclear retaliation. How seriously should the international community take these words, and should people fear for the worst?
These threats should be completely ignored, as the self-proclaimed Republic of Kosovo does not have any kind of nuclear or otherwise weapons of mass destruction. We have confirmed this through satellite images and reconnaissance on the ground.
Okay, I see. So, in the official statement, you called these groups terrorist separatist elements. Could you elaborate on what intelligence or evidence that has supported this characterization of Kosovo?
Well, you see, this organization, it operates much like the Mujahideen or other extremist organizations have in the past. It largely commits attacks, guerrilla-style attacks on the police of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, and now that the Yugoslav army has been moved in to stop them, they have also been attacking members of the Yugoslav army with rockets and different weapons, which were largely looted after the collapse of the Socialist Republic of Albania in 1991. Otherwise, they have also been linked to many massacres of ethnically Serbian, Bulgarian, and Roma civilians in the region of Kosovo and Metohija.
I see. Some certainly compelling evidence you've certainly gathered there. Recently, you have also authorized large scale troop deployments and air support into Kosovo and uh, Metohija. What are the strategic objectives of this current operation?
Well, there has always been a Yugoslav military presence on the territory of Kosovo and Metohija. Uh, this mostly consisted of border battalions which guarded the line of control between the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, the Republic of Albania, and of course the Republic of Macedonia. However, lately, as these attacks have become more common, uh, the Pristina Corps of the Yugoslav Third Army has been moved out of their barracks in order to engage known terrorist elements in the area. And there is a plan that with this operation, all terrorist activity within Kosovo should be neutralized. We have already managed to eliminate multiple terrorist leaders within Kosovo and Metohija, some of them via airstrikes. Of course, multiple of them have also been apprehended, and we have gained much intelligence from them.
I see. So you can definitely say things are going well for you so far. Vietnamese
Indeed.
troops recently and air units have joined Yugoslav forces on the ground in Kosovo. How do you view this military partnership? And more importantly, what message do you think this will send to every nation in the world?
Well, the Vietnamese troops which have been deployed on the territory of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia are largely simply peacekeepers deployed to prevent civilian casualties on the ground. They have also sent air units. These are largely for reconnaissance purposes and humanitarian efforts. However, some combat and strike groups have also been moved to the southern province, where they have successfully taken out many strategic targets in the area that were being used by the Kosovo Liberation Army. I believe that this partnership will be a long lived one, as the Federal Republic of Vietnam has always, in essence, been a close ally of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. I believe that the countries of the world should not be alarmed by this friendship, and I believe that after stabilization is introduced in Kosovo and Metohija, that the forces of the Federal Republic of Vietnam can peacefully return home.
I see. Certainly some interesting goals there, and it's nice to see that you're looking out for your public. Some voices abroad accuse Yugoslavia of overreacting and or suppressing self-determination. How do you respond to these types of claims?
Well, these claims are completely unfounded. This is due to propaganda and lies that are shared by members of the Kosovo Liberation Army and their sympathizers worldwide. Uh, the situation is as such that we are we are looking out for our people. We are attempting to limit criminal activity in the region, and we are trying to stop civilian casualties and otherwise harmful activities that could be happening in the area. For example, the Kosovo Liberation Army has taken part in many efforts of drug trafficking, arms smuggling, and other highly illegal activities that threaten the security of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. We are also glad to allow self-determination for the Albanian population of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, as there are multiple Albanian minority parties running for local and regional elections in the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia.
I see. On diplomatic and humanitarian concerns, the Alkebulan People's Federation has called for a disarmament and negotiations, closing key waterways to any types of military shipments. How does Yugoslavia view these calls?
Well, we see this as a sort of escalation, as a sort of threat. However, this does not affect our operations or anything functioning in the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. And well, while this is an unfortunate turn of events, we do agree with the Alkebulan People's Federation that the conflict should be ended as soon as possible in order to prevent further civilian casualties and damage to the region as a whole. War, nobody will benefit from it in the long run. And well, while we would love to negotiate, we simply cannot negotiate with terrorist elements that are actively killing and injuring members of the Yugoslav army, the Yugoslav police, and civilians living in the region of Kosovo and Metohija.
I see. Some certainly strong points of views there. In any military operation, there are concerns for civilian safety, especially with the ones you've just mentioned. What measures has your government taken to protect non combatants in the regions of Kosovo and Metohija?
As previously stated, many humanitarian efforts have been started, especially by our allies in Vietnam, to firstly prevent civilian casualties, and secondly evacuate certain parts of the region that are under threat from the Kosovo Liberation Army. The Serbian police has been deployed across the region to also evacuate certain villages with very high Kosovo Liberation Army activity. We have attempted as much as we can to prevent any kind of civilian casualties, any kind of damage to civilian property, and to keep the peace and stability in the region.
I see. Do you potentially see a diplomatic path forward, or is the window for dialogue now closed?
Well, good question. Dialogue was first on the table, and we were considering granting the Kosovo Republic autonomous province status, which it had previously held since 1974, but this status was abolished in 1990 due to separatist sentiment and terrorist activity within this region. However, ever since, major threats and attacks have been made by the Kosovo Liberation Army and its affiliated organizations. We are no longer willing to negotiate without the disarmament of the Kosovo Liberation Army and the persecution of all those responsible for the deaths of Yugoslav civilians and Yugoslav servicemen.
I see. Certainly sounds the window is most certainly closed, especially with how you put things. Moving on to leadership questions and personal ones. This crisis certainly places a lot of responsibility, especially on your shoulders as chief of staff. How do you balance the weight of command to preserve life?
Well, the situation is certainly difficult. I find it quite concerning that my orders could end up causing civilian and innocent casualties and destruction in this region, and I am attempting as much as possible to be considerate in my troop movements and the orders that I send down the chain of command. However, of course, it is not always perfect. We have received reports of civilian casualties, especially in the southern province of Dragaš, where Kosovo Liberation Army activity has been particularly brutal, forcing the Yugoslav army to adopt, well, high firepower methods, where they would simply destroy all, if not most, buildings controlled by the Kosovo Liberation Army. However, I am trying my best to end that.
Understandable, and our thoughts and prayers go out to the people of Dragash. For any Yugoslavians that might be watching tonight, what message do you have for those who fear war and for families who have loved ones out on the front lines trying to fight this border conflict, shall we call it?
Well, my thoughts and prayers are definitely with them. However, I assure you, I will never allow our men to die without reason. They will not die in vain. I am trying my best to minimize casualties on the front line, even if that means adopting unconventional tactics. And we hope for a quick resolution to this conflict. And well, with the looks of things, it appears that this conflict is not long for this world because the Yugoslav army is moving in with more equipment and more fire support, and the Kosovo Liberation Army is now on the run. It has been routed on most fronts.
I see. Some very strong words and certainly some very strong progress made there, I do have to say. Now, onto a little serious matter before I finish things off. How do you address the reports of suspected war crimes and bombings of civilians within Kosovo by your own forces?
Well, these claims are largely false and unfounded, as the Yugoslav army is a professional organization which is committed to disallowing any kind of civilian casualties at the hands of the Yugoslav army and protecting civilian and military life at all costs.
I see. So, to finally wrap things up, General Colonel, in your view, what does this struggle ultimately mean for the future of Yugoslavia as a sovereign nation?
Well, as you probably already know, this struggle is existential for us. Kosovo and Metohija is a cultural birthplace for the nation of Serbia and Yugoslavia as a whole. Many people who live in Novi Sad, in Belgrade, in Podgorica, they all have their roots found in Kosovo, and the buildings still standing there since medieval times really represent that. And well, I believe that this struggle will soon be ended successfully. And well, that should end all worries that the Yugoslav people and the Yugoslav nation should have about this situation. And generally, I believe that the future of Yugoslavia, despite these struggles, remains very bright.
Well, General Colonel, I definitely have to say that was a very positive message you gave out. And I I hope for the betterment of the future and for the world that Yugoslavia can end this conflict peacefully without having to resort to all out war. And that, unfortunately, is all we have time for on Voice of the Republic. General Colonel, again, it was brilliant having you here.
It's an honor.
And now, dear viewers, this is the end of the Voices of the Republic. We will now transition over to the other side of the news. That was some brilliant words heard by our friend here. Now, let us move on to more brighter news and more internal matters, which might just brighten the mood. In domestic developments, New Concordia's light rail metro completed the first phase, promising to connect workers' districts to the industrial quarter of cultural heart of the capital. In the North Agricultural Belt, collective farms report a record of 15% surplus over seasonal grain quotas, attributed to modern irrigation and community dedication. The National Symphony Orchestra's summer tour will visit 12 regional cities with special concerts in commemoration of the Republic's 50th anniversary. And finally, the National Meteorological Bureau forecasts fair weather across the Republic this weekend, with isolated coastal showers expected in the east. And now we will pass over to the front lines, where we shall have some interesting information about military developments.
And we turn our attention to the military of Arcadia. Tonight's special report unpacks the cascading crisis in Kosovo, a flashpoint whose tremors reach far beyond its borders. Kosovo's parliament issues threats of nuclear retaliation, demanding full independence and mobilizing 5,000 troops to its border. Yugoslavia reaffirming sovereignty. Masses, thousands of soldiers, special forces, armored vehicles, and air assets, declaring readiness to restore constitutional order by force. Vietnam, after withdrawing recognition, launches airstrikes targeting Kosovar militant cells, deploys 5,000 ground troops, and the frigate Tran Hung Dao to the erratic, reportedly shelling separatist positions. The Alkebulan People's Federation shuts down the Suez and Gibraltar routes to unsanctioned military shipments, urging separatists to disarm and Yugoslavia to show restraint. The risk of small spark igniting wider confrontation, drawing in regional global powers. History remembers Sarajevo tonight. The world wonders if Pristina might echo it. For now, all eyes remain fixed on the fragile line between threats and tragedy. And now, for the glory of Arcadia. 50 years ago, from the ruins of division, a new dawn rose, the birth of the Federal Republic of Arcadia. Out of the ashes and collapse of chaos, the impossible became inevitable. A nation forged in the crucible of necessity, forged by visionaries of the founding council, commanders, strategists, and statesmen. Arcadia rose not merely as a republic, but as a bulwark of order, guided by the enduring motto: freedom is obedience, obedience is Arcadia. Our republic emerged from hardship as a testament to the power of collective will, discipline, and command. It was in those formative years that our fields were reclaimed through coordination, our factories built under direction, and our cities reborn with precision. Millions labored side by side, not in fear of collapse, but in pursuit of a singular vision, bound not by weakness or indecision, but by duty, by resolve, and by an unshakable belief in the Arcadian way. Our armed forces, the shield and spine of our people, stood at the heart of our rebirth, not merely protectors of peace, but architects of our prosperity. From barracks to assembly lines, from academics to farms. It was the uniformed service of our citizens that carried this nation forward. And tonight, as we face a world once more shadowed by conflict, we draw strength from that legacy. Not just history, but inheritance. The knowledge that unity, discipline, and shared sacrifice, under the guidance of firm leadership, can overcome any storm. We do not retreat. We do not fracture. We endure. We prevail. We are Arcadia. And back to the final segment of the evening.
Before we conclude, tomorrow the National Assembly debates new industrial modernization funding, cultural events across the Republic mark Founders Week, and a diplomatic delegation from the Alkebulan People's Republic arrives in New Concordia for talks. Arcadia State News will continue to bring you the truth in service of unity and vigilance. From New Concordia, this was Arcadia State News. For the Republic, for the people, for tomorrow. This has been Jonathan Kessler. Good night.